Welcome to Rambling with Resolveera. This is our episode number 4, and today we have Dr. Richard Kahn to talk about early intervention and issues related to failure to thrive. Dr. Kahn is a dietitian and he has more than 25 years of experience in the field. I know Dr. Kahn for about 10 years now. We have worked with families and children who had been facing issues related to failure thrive. And I believe, Dr. Kahn, this was about 10 years back that we worked together. And since then, I have never left my connection with Dr. Kahn. He is like my big brother in the field of early intervention, and I am so glad, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here, Dr. Kahn. So as we begin our episode, Dr. Kahn, please tell our viewers and our listeners about your work and how does your work impact the community at large?
I think my main goal is for parents to have a richer understanding about what nutrition is, especially for young children. The thing that makes things hard for parents, and it was hard for my wife and I as well, is that when kids are little, they can't talk. They can't tell us things. They can't say, "Mommy, I don't like oatmeal," but we keep feeding it to them. And they do all these things which don't seem to make sense because we figure our job is to make sure they eat. What happened in this country about 130 years ago was that failure to thrive was a big problem. Thousands and thousands of children were dying from it every year. And there are many technical definitions of failure to thrive, but the one that really strikes me is that it's called starvation in the presence of food.
Understood.
And so it's not a question of whether there's food or not. When this problem was big in this country, one of the top pediatricians used to think that they just hadn't figured out the right infant formula. Because what had happened was a lot of women died in childbirth, or children would be quarantined. In those days, they had just discovered germs. And so if you got sick, they would put you into quarantine, and they would put you into quarantine for weeks and weeks. And the only people who could see the child were the nurses and the doctor. That means the parents weren't there. They didn't understand that the child needs the parent to eat. The child needs love. And these were the two solutions. One was to have smaller wards so the nurses could play with the children, and that took care of the problem. The children felt loved and they could eat. It was really simple, but it was a big, big discovery. The other one was the invention of foster care. And the doctor who discovered it, to me, is one of the most important people in at least New York City history. She was one of the first female doctors, Dr. Sarah Josephine Baker. She was a pediatrician. Really, nobody would hire her because she was a woman. But she told the city that, look, most of the people taking care of children are women, and I'm a woman, and I should take care of them. So they couldn't argue against that. They told her to just visit families at home. And her description of where families lived is unbelievable. She describes the filth, the overcrowding, all kinds of horrible things. But she noticed that all the children were doing okay. And then she realized that there was just enough affection and care under these horrible, horrible conditions, that the children didn't notice the filth and the overcrowding. All they noticed was that their mother loved them. And so they had no feeding problems.
Understood.
And this was a huge, huge success. And the hospitals emptied of these children who were starving to death in the presence of food.
It is a very strange concept, I would say, starvation in the presence of food. And I believe it's very difficult for many people to come across, I would say, wrap their mind across this concept, because failure to thrive is still, like, sometimes when I'm talking about these issues, I realize that it is still not a very talked about concern. It's very difficult for people to understand what is failure to thrive, what is starvation in the presence of food. And Dr. Kahn, Richard, I would really like you to uh, talk about the projects that you have done, like the one that we did about 10 years back. It was about failure to thrive, and you have continued your work in the field. I have continued my work in the field and approaching the issues differently from our perspectives. But please talk about the failure to thrive project. What was it about? Because you and I, we both know the successes that we saw and how things changed, how children gained weight. So that would be very interesting to talk about.
One of the ways that I teach parents is with books. I don't give them scholarly books to read. I give them books like this.
Waiting is not easy. Simple books.
This is a wonderful book. The author is Mo Willems. These are very famous books. They're easy to get. The purpose of this book, on the face of it, is to teach children about waiting. Now, it's really hard for children to wait. It just is. They don't know what wait means. They want it now. And it's hard for grown-ups to have patience. And the more important the concern is with our children, the less we're going to have patience. And really, patience is the vitamin that children need, because they don't know what we're thinking. If they don't want to eat and we're worried, they don't know why we're worried. They don't know about vitamins. They don't know about protein. They don't know that the pediatrician has told you whatever they've told you. All they know is a person who's really nice to them all the time. All of a sudden, when food appears, they go crazy.
That's so true.
Vera and I worked together. We told the parents some really basic things, and I'm going to be sending this information to Vera when she posts this, so you'll have access to it. But there's a few points in very young children's growth that parents need to know what the basic needs of children are. Because when we worked together, most of the children had some type of delay, and one or two of them had really severe delays. Children do not know they have delays. Parents know it. It may be heartbreaking, but children do not know they have a problem. They think their parents have a problem. The problem is the parents don't understand me. Why is this person, again, who usually loves me and is nice to me, go crazy when there's food at the table? This makes life hard because the main job of a parent is to protect and care for the child. And there's a wonderful book. It's a very, very famous book in this country called Make Way for Ducklings.
Make Way for Ducklings.
And it's a wonderful book. And it's about how a mother takes care of her children. She has to find a safe place for them to grow up in Boston. And there's cars and kids on bicycles, and she's very worried that something might hurt her children. So she has to find a nice, quiet place. And because she's a duck, there has to be water. So it's a story about how she raises them. But the thing that struck me in this book is that society is protecting her all the time. And there are these wonderful scenes how the police stop traffic so she can cross the street with her ducklings. And where one of the park keepers feeds her peanuts so she gets food to eat. It's important that parents have support, whether it's friends, relations, husband, whatever. Isolation is one of the causes of failure to thrive. I've worked with many different immigrant communities, and it is very easy for newcomers to this country to be isolated. There are language issues, transportation issues, cultural issues, and the huge families that many immigrant families are accustomed to. That family is not here. The grandmas, the aunts, the uncles, the sisters, the brothers, the friends, all these people are not here.
Correct.
That person who the mother can leave the baby with, if she has to go out, whether it's for something important or just getting her nails done, those people are not here. And this creates stress. And sometimes this stress gets related to eating because the baby has to eat. And that's true. But there's a way to do it that makes life easier.
Correct.
And the basic form of eating is based on breastfeeding.
Correct.
Because breastfeeding needs two people. The mother has to offer and the child has to take. And if the child doesn't want to take, there's no way to put the breast in the mouth. It's just too soft. So if the baby doesn't want to do it, the mother usually understands. With a bottle, it gets a little more complicated because the mother can control the baby more with the bottle.
Yeah.
So when the mother is breastfeeding, she knows right away the child is hungry. The baby makes some sound, wah, wah. She feels that the milk has come down. It's called a letdown reflex, and everybody's happy. After a few weeks, the body knows how much the baby's going to take. The baby takes it. The mother feels that also. And so when the baby's full, he stops and everybody's happy. But with bottles, it's a little different. And that's sometimes where the problem can start. The mother can hold the bottle in the baby's mouth for a long time.
Correct.
If the child was born a little early and they had to do whatever in the child's mouth, use tubes and things like that, that child is frequently very sensitive. And so to push that bottle into the child's mouth makes the child not want to eat, because this is when the child begins to experience stress. And when little children experience stress, when infants experience stress, a bunch of hormones kick in and they suppress the appetite. Here's the mother who's dying to do a good job to feed her baby and doesn't realize that the baby doesn't want to be fed at that point, or doesn't want to be fed in that manner at that point. And so the baby starts moving their head or sticking their tongue to push out the bottle, and the mother doesn't get it, because kids usually need to eat every 2 or 3 hours. Breastfed babies, usually it's 2 hours. Formula babies, it's about 3 hours. But the mother doesn't get it, because the infant's looking for affection, for food affection. And the affection is, do you understand me, mommy? Right now, I don't want it. Right now, I'm sensitive in my mouth because I came out too early. And so I need you to be a little more softer with this bottle that you're feeding me. And if the mother figures it out, then fine, there's no problem. But if the mother's worry takes precedence over the child's letting her know through gestures,
Correct.
then the child starts rejecting food. The next time, the next juncture where this kind of problem can arise is between 4 and 6 months. Sometime between this period, these 4 and 6 months, the baby starts realizing there's such a thing as food. He or she's at the table, everybody's eating, they're sitting on mommy's lap, and everybody's doing this thing. They're touching this stuff on the table and putting it in their mouth. Another interesting thing happens around this period. The baby begins to understand that, oh, I'm a person. And that baby may need their parents and their grandparents and whomever for diapers, for holding, for all kinds of things.
Right.
But that baby is beginning to think, oh, I can push the ball. It rolls. If I make enough noise, someone will come to visit me.
Right. There is a lot of realization and there is a lot of activity around that age when they start touching and feeling and understanding, little things that, my hands can do this. With my finger, I can do that.
That's right. And one of the things the child can do at that point is make a mess.
Totally.
I don't know if there's a parent out there that loves cleaning up their baby's messes, but some parents think that cleaning the mess is the most important thing. But to the baby, it's not, because the baby is learning about the world. And also they're learning about you and the other family members in relation to food, because they're watching maybe their brother or their cousin or their uncle or whoever, and they're touching this food, putting it in their mouth, and nobody's bothering them. Oh, baby says, oh, so that's how you do it. Because that's how children learn. They learn by copying.
Yes.
But all of a sudden, somebody comes along and says, no, you can't do it. And the little baby's brain is not set up to be told, no, you can't copy. And by the time the baby's 4 and 6 months, they're already laughing like one of the parents. They're already acting like one of the parents. And we're beginning to see their personality. And children learn their personalities from their parents. So that child is either acting like mommy or daddy. And if grandma's doing a lot of work with the baby, they're beginning to learn like grandma. And this is the child asking to be understood. There are certain safety precautions at 4 to 6 months. Food has to be, like baby food texture, puree. You can take the food, just mush it in your hands. You can put it in a blender. You don't have to make special foods for the baby. Again, I'm going to send information for Vera to have, but there's enough things that kids can eat that's right at the table. And again, You can just mush it in your hand. It's not a big deal. This is my thing. Some kids like high chairs, and if your kid's a squirmer, some of those kind of kids, they like to be in a chair. It sort of holds them and it calms them down. Some kids like to sit on mommy or daddy's lap, but it's the same thing. The chair provides one kind of sensory input, the lap another. But you watch your child, and that's really what's important, is watching your child.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that and these points, Richard, because this is the month of August is the National Breastfeeding Month, right? And I just posted on my consultancy on my Resolveera website. We just started it. This is the first ever blog that we started, and from now on we'll have like a monthly blog. But we actually started with the self-care for mom, for breastfeeding mothers, because as you mentioned, breastfeeding, understanding the child's needs, and stress around food, parents getting stressed around food. That is so true because even I remember as when I had my daughter, and if she didn't eat, it was like a constant alarm, like, why isn't she eating anything? But thanks to the experience of, that I had working with you, there were some tips that would immediately come back to my mind that maybe the kid is not ready right now to have the food. But yes, breastfeeding mothers can get extremely stressed when the child is not eating or when the child is not responding to the cues that the parents are providing around food. Also, I'm glad that you mentioned the love and the care and the exploration stage of the children, because in our work with the families, we actually saw that parents were in this habit of holding on to their child and not letting them explore, because the issue was cleaning sometimes. Sometimes it was hesitation because of the cultural difference and the social interaction that was happening there. There was a lot of language barrier that we came across, and it was like, especially we worked with mothers and children in the group, and for the mothers it was like, oh, don't go and touch there, or don't do that, or don't do this. So holding on to the children was one of the barriers that was leading towards stopping the child from exploring food, trying new things, gaining weight, eating by their choice. But once we showed the mothers the different ways to to let the child explore food, and I still remember the fruit kebabs that you introduced in the workshop. I used them myself when I was teaching my child to have fruits and put them in like little nice easy skewers and help her to learn to explore the taste and try them. This was like an eye opener, and I still remember the smiles on the moms' faces that we worked with, that it was like they were getting reintroduced to their own children.
Yeah, I mean, if we could describe our work to professionals, we would describe it one way. But as far as the parents were concerned, they were coming to a little children's party.
Yes.
We had to, show them certain things, but basically it was a lot of fun. And we told them we would clean up afterwards. We already knew that. And as soon as a parent learned how to do it, we let them teach the other parents. It's not that hard. The actual techniques are simple. The hard part is understanding that your child is talking to you and wants to grow up. So if your 4-month-old or 6-month-old said, "Mommy, I want to be a doctor," well, you'd be really happy. You'd run out and buy a chemistry set or have them watch biology videos and things like that. But when it comes to food, parents seem to be very concerned that children are going to choke.
Yes.
Things like that. Once we got parents over that hump, we really had no problem. But the main thing is that it's basically simple. The hard part is, as far as I'm concerned, is the parent, not the child. The parent sees the child as a problem, and as parents, we can't help it. The child also sees us as a problem. And once we start getting worried, the fear part of the brain takes over. And we may think we're in control, but we're not. And once we get into that part of our brain, the child gets into that part of their brain. All they see is fear. We may think we're hiding it and all kinds of things, but Children see all through this. They don't know words like architecture and pediatrician. They don't know what any of this stuff means, but they do know how we feel. They may not know why we feel this way, but they know we feel a certain way. And after a while, if it goes on too long, as soon as they see food, all these hormones and fears kick in, and it keeps spiraling out of control. So our goal, what Vera and I did, was get the parent into the thinking part of the brain. The fear part of the brain is back here. The thinking part of the brain is up front here. And that's when you can say, oh, gee, why isn't my child eating? You can say, well, grandma was just here. She's feeding him nonstop. He just had a bottle 20 minutes ago. Gee, maybe I made a mistake. I shouldn't have given him milk before mealtime. And this is the important thing. The next juncture happens after between 6 and 8 months. Your child is really growing, really growing. By this time, they figured out that when you drink something, they want to do it too. Mm-hmm. One thing is you can let them hold their bottle. And when you're drinking something and you see those little arms go up to your cup, well, that means, Mommy, can you get me a cup, please? I love you so much. I want to be like you. That's the time for a sippy cup. Now, you can feed your child from your cup. It's not that the real purpose of a sippy cup is to control mess. The child does not need a sippy cup. Mommy does.
I like that line. Thanks for saying that.
We all have our limitations, and sippy cups are okay. It's just when you buy one for a 6-month-old, if it says leak-proof, don't buy it because it'll be too hard for your children to control the flow of the liquid. The other thing that children like to do is take the cup and turn it upside down and watch the juice or whatever come out. I don't know why they do it, but they all do it. There's limits to what we can do. The next important juncture is between 8 and 10 months. And at this point, the child is beginning to notice that people use forks and spoons. In some communities, like from South Asia or West Africa, people eat with their hands. And this is really perfect for children because children, our hand is set up for this. And some children, they don't quite get the spoon. But this, they're doing really a few days after they're born, they figured out how to put their fingers in their mouth. And so this is really important. So if you come from a background where eating with your hands is part of the world, then that's fine. Your children will learn how to use a fork and a spoon. My grandparents, when they came here from Eastern Europe, they ate with their hands. Forks and they had spoons, but most eating was done with their hands. By the time I grew up, they were quite good at using forks and knives and things like that. This is important. Many cultures have many valuable things. And if your goal is to turn your child into an American right away, have a little patience. By the time they go to school, there probably will be too American for you. And that's another kind of problem. The next thing, important thing that happens is between 10 and 12 months. Between 10 and 12 months, the child has pretty much figured it all out.
Right.
And they want to do it. So again, if your little baby says to you, Mommy, I really want to be a lawyer. Well, you'd run out to get the children's book of law so they could start learning the laws so they'd be ready for law school in 18 years. And maybe you get them to watch lawyer shows on TV. But the most important thing right now is that your child is totally watching what you do, what your brothers do, and what all these people in their lives do. And before I forget, let's say you have one child and things aren't going the way you like. Invite or go visit another child. Little children love to learn from older children. Somehow they figured out that a child is different from an adult. Now that older child can sit there in the most strict manner and say, now this is how you eat. You do this, you do this, you do this. And for some reason, a 4-year-old can do that with your child. But if you, and the child will be so happy. But if you do it, you're going to have nothing but headaches.
That is true. That is true. Now, having said that, Richard, this is like a perfect point where, we are talking about the socio-emotional bonding with different family members, with the mothers. And I would really request you to mention your book here that you're writing.
Oh, yeah. So,
I mean, like it is exactly what we are talking about. So this is a perfect time for you to, if you can read some lines.
yeah, sure. Uh, I wrote a book. I'm hoping some publisher will take it. The Again, parents are worried about food and the weight. And let me just say a few things before I go to the book.
Sure.
You have to trust your pediatrician. The pediatrician has growth charts. The growth charts are international. That means they've included weights from children all over the world. It used to be that it was just in the United States. And even England, where life is pretty similar to life here and income levels are similar, they had a different growth chart. But they realized this was wrong. It was a kind of cultural blindness or imperialism or something. And so they included children from Africa, Asia, where children grow a little differently for all kinds of reasons. So if you're from a country that's not this country, if you went back to your country, the doctor would be using the same chart. And if that doctor says to you, your child is growing fine, that's adequate. Believe me, your doctor will tell you if something is wrong. The job of a pediatrician is really just to tell you everything is fine. If something's really wrong with your child, the pediatrician makes a referral. 90-something% of all pediatric visits is, your child is fine.
I see.
And that sounds so boring because is my daughter growing okay? The teeth haven't come yet. Where's their hair? It says on the chart that he's supposed to do X, Y, Z. He's not doing X, Y, Z. And the pediatrician will tell you, some kids do it sooner, some kids do it later. If there's other children around, children learn really fast. They'll learn sooner than what the chart says. So we can worry, and that's what this book is about. It's about worrying, a mother's worry. Yes, we have to worry. If you don't worry, something's wrong. But if the worry's not related to a real problem, then the worry itself makes a problem. And so if parents qualify for WIC, and these I'll be giving this information to Vera, these are like basic things that children can and can't eat, especially under age 12. After age 12 months, after 12 months, they're pretty much eating everything. And it discusses things like spoons and cups and making messes and things like that. And these are excellent. These are excellent, simple sheets. So, part of the job working with families is, of course, to teach the mother. And there's many ways to teach, and I love these little books. And I just want to mention one more before I stop. There's this great book called Chicks Run Wild.
Chicks Run Wild. Okay.
And this is a great book. The little mother hen's children don't want to go to sleep. She puts them in their bed, she gives them a kiss goodnight, and she turns off somewhere to do whatever. Within 5 minutes, the little chicks are jumping around and making a lot of noise. So she runs upstairs and says, "Oh, come on, little chicks, it's time for bed." So she puts them in bed, and she goes downstairs, and this goes on, and the mother starts getting really angry. She's a really typical mommy because she's had it. If you're a parent who has had it, it means you're normal, but it still means you have a child who doesn't understand that you've had it. Because children seem to have boundless energy, and by the time 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock rolls around, we've had it.
For a moment, I thought you're describing my house.
Well, it is your house because it's everybody's house.
That's so true.
What happens in Chicks Run Wild is that she realizes it's not going to work anymore. She's not going to tuck them in for the 5th time. And she says to them, "I'm gonna teach you guys the chicken dance." So she does some silly dance with them, and they get tired, right? Because they weren't really tired before. It may have been bedtime for mommy, but the little chicks didn't think it was bedtime.
Right.
But now they're tired, right? Nature has kicked in, and they go to sleep. And maybe there's an ideal parent out there who doesn't get fed up. I know I got fed up. And there's all sorts of wonderful books about putting your child to sleep. Let's see. Do you got it? Okay. And then it says, "And Mama runs wild." And I'm not sure if you can pick this up on the image, but she's painting her toenails and watching TV. And there's a little book there. And is there anything else? She gets to relax. But the relaxation comes because she's understood her children. And that's what's important. And if you wait for your child to eat, if you have patience, as I showed you in that first book, which is really hard for children to have, and it's hard for parents to have after a while, and that included me, then your children will probably do pretty much what you're asking them to do. There's a saying in family therapy that if the parents do this much, the child does this much, because that child is dying for you to love them and wants to please you. And if they see that you're happy, they will be so, so happy. And they need your appreciation, and they need it really deeply, and they need you to understand. So I wrote this book. I wrote my book, and it's about a mother and a child, except the baby can't talk yet. So the baby's just thinking, and the mother has to figure out what the baby's saying. And so I'll read you some of the few pages. And so the baby's thinking, right? Mommy, when I make a sound, say something back to me. My tone of voice gives you some of the meaning. And the mommy thinks, thank you for letting me know. I did not realize you were talking to me, right? We don't know really what the baby feels. We just know that they're sad or happy or whatever. So if we respond in a sad way to a sad child or a happy way to a happy child, then the child knows they're being understood. So if your child is crying, crying, crying because who knows, sounds sad, right? If your friend or your sister or somebody said, oh, this terrible, terrible thing happened, the first thing you would never say is, oh, it's okay, let's cheer up. No, you say, oh, that's terrible. And your baby needs the same thing. And you can do that with your tone of voice. Of course, use words, but the baby doesn't have them.
Correct.
Okay, so now the baby's 4 months old. He goes, I begin to get excited by food and lick my lips and chew with nothing in my mouth. I learn by watching. I want to start eating. Ask my pediatrician or a dietitian for advice if you are worried, right? Because it's natural to worry. Will my child choke? Oh, I actually want to say one thing here. There's, in English anyway, we have two words, choking and gagging. Choking is dying. That's really serious. Gagging is learning. Right, like right now, right? We still gag. Grown-ups gag. The food goes down the wrong way for whatever reason. We're talking with our friend, whatever. So this is a skill we have to learn, is what to do with food when it's going down the wrong way. If the baby can't ever get over this thing, then discuss it with the pediatrician, especially if the child was born early and they had to do intubations. So then the mother has seen the baby, licking their lips and chewing, even though there's nothing in the mouth, because this is what the baby sees. Everybody's chewing.
Right.
And so the mother thinks, oh, you're telling me you were hungry with actions. I was nervous about feeding you baby food at this age. Your pediatrician said it's okay to start eating thin foods like cereals, vegetables, and ground meat. I'm doing my best to understand what your actions and sounds tell me. And then the baby says, watch me, mommy. I will show you when I want to eat. I will lean towards the spoon and open my mouth. That is the best way I know how to tell you that I am still hungry. If I keep my mouth shut or turn my head, I do not want food. Wait and watch. I will show you if I want more. Oh, now I see that you are telling me something I need to know about you.
So what I understand from your book, Richard, that it's a, I would say like it is a very, very helpful resource for parents to really go and understand. And it is also for professionals, because if they are reading your book and working with mothers and helping them understand the signs and the ways the children are interacting, it becomes much more easier. And I think this is across the board. It does not cater to the immigrant community, or it does not cater to any particular community. It focuses on mothers across the board who have a young child and who need resources and help in understanding the cues that the child is giving them.
That's right. At one point, I was working in a place. We had people from South Asia, people from West Africa, and people from the Caribbean, Mexico, Central America. And I once tried to count how many countries there were, and it was at least 20.
Wow.
And I speak a little Spanish. I learned about 6 words in Bengali. I learned a few West African languages, but really it's impossible for people like me to learn all about all these cultures. I mean, some we like for God knows what reason, but really we can't. And the important thing about this kind of thinking, and I want parents to know that this is the Western view of parenting that we're talking about. It's not the only way of bringing up children. If you have no problems, you don't need to do what I'm telling you. You're doing enough right things. You don't need me. It's not like I'm telling you something that you have to do. These are only for problems or to prevent problems. When we had this problem of severe underweight, the important discovery was that love and affection will help the child gain weight. Yes, they needed food, but the source for the food was this love and affection, being held, being with other people, not being isolated.
Understood. And I'm glad that you mentioned problems. I'm glad that you mentioned the issue of love and affection. But sometimes we also see like an overdose of love and affection. And I am segueing into my next question, where I want to focus on the impact of COVID-19 and raising children, right? So obviously, the pandemic has had it, and it is still continuing. It has an impact on everybody across the board. Like whoever you talk to, whoever I have spoken, the episodes so far, not a single one has been without the discussion about the impact of COVID-19. And sometimes, with COVID-19, we have also seen the issue of overeating, gaining weight, and most of the time we say it for the adults, right? That, oh, I'm not able to go to the gym, oh, I'm not able to go out to work, and I'm gaining weight, I'm sitting at one place. It's everybody's story. But going down the age, focusing on children and infants and young ones who are still learning to communicate with the parents, do we see the overweight issue with COVID-19? And if we do, what should the parents do? What are the resources? How to approach that?
Okay, from my perspective, there's 2 resources, or 3 resources. One is learning how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Another is food label, and the other is going outside. Now, even at the height of COVID, the city recommended taking your children outside. Now, in the very first days, they shut the playgrounds, but this changed fairly quickly when they realized that it's pretty hard to get COVID when you're outside. So you can take your kid to the park. Some neighborhoods may have a very few parks. Backyards will do. As far as I'm concerned, if it's at all practical, take your child outside. It means you will go outside. Children just need to run around. Mommy and chicks run wild. If you let them run around, they will get tired. And as soon as you get home, they will take a nap. And you will have your little break to do whatever chores you want, or talk to your friend or relative and gossip or complain to your heart's delight. This is all fine. But your children have to move, and children learn how to walk somewhere between 10 and 12 months. And that means it's time, because walking is associated with chewing and eating crunchy foods and becoming mature eaters. So that even from a developmental or biological standpoint, eating and running around are related. Again, the more the children see, they just love to copy. They're set up for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing, is just go outside. If you have concerns about contagion, discuss it with the doctor The city has, I'll give you the resources.
So the resources that you send me, Richard, I would be able to put them up on the YouTube for our viewers, and
Yes.
I can also put it up across my website so that the listeners of the podcast can actually go on the website and see the resources there as well.
That's, it's sort of hard to get COVID outside. They may, request masks when you're indoors, but we don't see requests for masks out of doors. And when they're gathering, they just ask for vaccines.
Right.
The other thing is food labels and common sense. So let's talk about ice cream. Everybody likes it. Okay, so look at the food label. And it'll tell you that if you buy Haagen-Dazs or Ben & Jerry's, that a half cup of ice cream is around 230 calories for half a cup. And I don't think anybody just eats half a cup. A half a cup is a little bigger than a golf ball. If you buy Breyer's ice cream or another brand, you'll see on the label that it's 130 calories for half a cup. That's half the calories, and you're still serving ice cream. So you can look at the food labels. Pretzels, crackers are relative. If you get crackers like saltines that are low in fat, they're low in calories. If you get Ritz crackers and potato chips, they're going to be high in calories. So some of it is just practical. Some of it is common sense. Fruit is has less calories than bread, if you just want to give a quick snack to your kid. The only thing here is just be careful with bananas. Kids love them, and they're cheap. But from the point of view of nutrition, they're like bread or potatoes. Mm-hmm. In cultures where bananas and plantains are an important part of the diet, they are used like grains. Right, Dominicans make a cereal out of green plantains called mango. So just be aware that bananas are like bread, and that if you're giving a banana, fine, but just realize that you're giving food. If your concern is that the child is gaining too much weight, then try an apple or an orange or plums, whatever's in season. The next part, that's a little trickier. And that's called saying no. And all parents have this many no's a day. It's like a roll of coins. And once you've spent your roll of coins, your children go deaf. They don't hear the word no. And I'm sure every language has a word like this, but in English it's called pushback. And we think they're disobedient and all kinds of things. But again, parents are thinking about today, tomorrow, nutrition, protein, the pediatrician, I have to do the laundry, I have to go to work. Where's my friend? I thought my husband would be home by now to give me a break. And so it becomes hard to say no. There's all kinds of reasons why we don't say no. So there's all kinds of things you can do instead of saying no. So one is you're walking down the street, you're going shopping, you're doing what I said, you're taking your child outside, they're walking with you. And gosh, what's there? McDonald's, the pizza store, the candy store, and your child has figured it out. Mommy, I want pizza. Well, is it lunchtime and your schedule got messed up and you feel like going to pizza? Fine, no problem. Did your child just have lunch an hour ago? Is it likely your child is hungry? Well, no, probably not. So Richard has told you not to say no. What do? Well, there's a couple of things. One is you don't have to walk down the block where McDonald's and the pizza store are. You can go on a side street. That way it doesn't even happen. The other thing is you can ask your child, if there's verbal, you can say, where are you hungry? Show me where you're hungry. Well, if they're really little, they don't know biology yet. And so if they're really hungry, they're going to point to their tummy, and then you know they're hungry. If you see their eyeballs go to the sky, well, they're really asking you for attention, because all kids know that when they ask for food, they're going to get attention. So we have to decide what's really going on. The other thing is when they're a little more verbal, this is a thing I think is a lot of fun. Again, mommy, I want pizza. Well, you don't want to give pizza right now, whatever the reason is, you're the mother. You can say to your child, how big a slice of pizza do you want? Well, the child will do something. And then you can say, what color pizza do you want? And you can keep asking questions like this, because most children want you to pay attention to them. And this is a game. And children love games. And we had a great game in my house. It was called the Chewed Food Museum. So for whatever reason, my son would, he was the oldest, he would chew his food, then go like this and go, see? And we'd have the chewed food on his tongue. So I invented the Chewed Food Museum. I said, okay, great. I said, we'll put that in the Chewed Food Museum. And we live in New York, and I told him that the Chewed Food Museum was in Tokyo, which was in Japan. And he already knew that Japan was far away. So there was no way he could say, can we go to the Chewed Food Museum today? And this was a really fun game, because we addressed his need for attention. Because the thing about games is they're about rules. Children love rules. They know what they want to do, what to expect. But they're still children. They like to break rules. That's what that is. So we let him break the rule, right? You don't show your chewed food at the table. And so when his little sister came along, she already saw this was a game. She saw it, from day one. So it just became a game. And it's the same thing when you ask them about the pizza or the McDonald's or whatever thing they're asking you about. And this doesn't have to be about food. You can just ask them about it. Like Vera, Vera, I'd like to get an Audi, but I really can't afford it. What should I do? Answer me.
How big an Audi do you want?
I want to get the one that's really big, the limousine size Audi.
And what color do you want?
Well, I was thinking of getting orange, but my wife really won't drive in an orange car. I might have to get like gray or maroon or something.
Wow, and I can think how early do you want it or how many days later you want it. Wow, that can be, this is fun.
Okay, and kids love this kind of thing. Okay, awesome. And if they're really hungry, you'll know. You're still their mother. And there are other things like you can say, not now, another time. Let's say, again, you're out and it is lunchtime, but you don't want to go to the pizza store, right? You're going to be home in 10 minutes anyway. And so you can say, okay, right now, I said I can give you an apple or some cherries. Which would you like? But all these techniques require you to be here in the thinking part of your brain.
And I completely understand. I'm a mom and I am a professional, and sometimes moms don't think. The professionals are doing that part. And sometimes the professional and the mom, the images, they completely merge. And it's like a constant fight. Like, who am I right now? The mom or the professionals? So talking about the professionals, Richard, we are at the point where we are wrapping up now our episode. So I would really want you to talk about how professionals, especially I represent the social workers part. So there are many social workers who are working in early intervention. They are in ABA. They are working with families and children and foster care and name it, and social workers are there. And especially in early intervention, the social workers that are working with these families, I would request you to share the piece of advice that you would give to them before we wrap up this episode. Like, how the social workers, how the professionals working with early intervention and the families and the little children, how can they make it more effective? I understand I'm not trying to focus on the cultural competency part, but making it more practice efficacy, focusing on more practice efficacy, more skills, because I think now when the families are at home, the children are at home, there is more attention required, right? So
Yeah.
how can professionals be more helpful and more resourceful in this field?
Again, the first thing is the professionals have to be able to honestly encourage the parents to take the children outside. Everybody needs it. The parents and the child. They just need it. After 5 minutes of walking, most people's body just relaxes.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, from the professional point of view, food is the symptom of a problem. It is never the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. What's the problem? Child has some developmental delay. Child was born early and there's some swallowing issues, okay? That means the social worker has to understand the difference between a simple interactional problem and a more complex one that may require a specialist, speech therapist, feeding therapist. Again, if the child is not saying 18 words by 18 months, speech therapy. Don't wait. Pediatricians always say, it's okay, wait. And as I've said before, the job of a pediatrician is to say it's okay. But for speech, in my opinion, the pediatrician would never wait for 2 years before examining speech therapy. Mm-hmm. Intervention is free. It's not related to income. As soon as you think your child is not saying those 18 or so words at 18 months, you call up early intervention, dial 311 in New York City, and request a speech evaluation. Of course, some kids start early, some kids start a little late. But if it's really not happening, get help. Because if that child can't speak at a developmentally appropriate age, it's going to create interactional problems. The second thing is that the social workers have to understand these developmental milestones. 4 to 6 months, 6 to 8, 8 to 10, and 10 to 12, and that by 15 months, the child should be eating everything on their own. And I'm just making notes. WHO has a great manual. It's really for field workers, but it explains everything for professionals.
Right.
Federal government has a nice website, Choose My Plate. It gives great information. It gives great information on what to do with little children and food. Mm-hmm. They need far less than we think. And that's because parents don't know how to say no. In some cultures, you don't say no to a child. But what I've learned is in those cultures, that child is running around all day outside. They walk out the door. They figure somebody's going to watch the child. Sometime during the day, somebody comes over and says, oh, he's going to be at so-and-so's house for lunch. The mommy goes, okay, great. And she does whatever she has to do. And the child comes home for dinner and then goes to bed. Why? Because the child's been running around all day. So professionals have to understand that many families, especially immigrant families, come from such a totally different background of how children are raised. In this country, mommy and that kid are in jail together. In other countries, there's so many relatives, there's so many other things that the mother may not even see the child until the end of the day. In fact, in many countries, the grandmother raises the child, but the grandmother can do it because all these other people are helping her and the children are running around all day. So if the child is running around, they're not near the fridge. When they get bored, some other kid comes along and all of a sudden they're not bored anymore. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, this is how we were raised. Your mother got you out of the house. She didn't want you to make a mess. And if the game went on too long, you finished the game no matter how hungry you were. And if your mother was really worried, she'd yell out the window for you or send your sister out for you and say, Mommy said it's time for lunch or something like that. So social workers have to be aware of these the changes, again, especially immigrant families.
Thank you for mentioning that, Richard, because you did bring back a lot of childhood memories for like my own, because that was a fact. I used to go out, play a lot, and definitely finish the game and come home. And if it's too late, I was yelled at. But that was it, like life was not boring, you know.
Yeah.
And that's very true, because I I try to take my daughter out every day, but then there are days when I want to, but I can't because of the busy schedule and the time constraints. And, you know, you do realize that the kids are missing out on that part because of so many other social and, like social and professional things happening around you, that sometimes going out with your child is the last thing in your list, where it should be one of the priorities.
Look, life was not perfect in my house. I don't want to say that I was the perfect parent. I lost my temper. My wife lost her patience. That's not the point. One is, if when you say no to your child, you're teaching them how to hear the word no in a safe environment.
Correct.
Okay, the teacher's going to say no. Their friends will say no. The girlfriend or the boyfriend will say no, and the boss will say no. They have to learn how to hear the word no, and know somewhere there's love behind it, because all these no's will happen in life. That's number one. The other thing is, none of us are perfect parents. And there was a really famous psychologist, Donald Winnicott, and he developed this phrase he called the good enough mother. Now, again, none of us are perfect. And that's sort of why I like this book here, Chicks Run Wild, because mommy loses her patience. But the important thing is not that she loses her patience. The important thing is that when she calms down and thinks, she shows the kids a kind of love. In this case, it's play with me love. And that's called reparation. So yeah, we make all kinds of dumb mistakes. We can't help it. The important thing is that we know how to repair. So you've said no, you realized your child is not hungry, you're not going to buy pizza, and they start crying. And I just want to relate a personal story that happened to me before I knew all this stuff. We were leaving the playground, and my daughter was around 2. And sure enough, there's an ice cream truck right outside the entrance to the playground, and we're going home for dinner. Daddy, can I have ice cream? No, we're going home for dinner. So we went back and forth, and I didn't know about these questions about what color ice cream and how big ice cream and things like that. And she starts screaming into my ear, howling, and I'm holding her. And I knew I wasn't going to buy the ice cream. And for some reason, I don't know why, I felt I had to hold her. One of the ways they get us is they get embarrassed. We get embarrassed, right? We're in the store, can I have potato chips? No. And they start in, and we get embarrassed. We can talk about that if you want. But this nicely dressed old lady taps me on the shoulder, and I figured, uh-oh, now I'm going to get it. They're going to tell me I'm a bad daddy. And in my neighborhood, there were a lot of refugees from Nazi Germany, and she was one of them. And in Germany, they started kindergarten. That's why it's a German word, even in this country. And the purpose of kindergarten and good daycare programs is to socialize the child. So they taught the teachers these little bits of child psychology. She goes, "Young man, you're doing the right thing." And she gave me the explanation and told me she was a kindergarten teacher in Germany and all this stuff. And so yes, my child was extremely unhappy. And fortunately, I got support instead of being told I was a bad father. But even though I was saying no, the child was being held. So whatever unhappiness she was experiencing, along with that unhappiness was love. Now, I wasn't sitting there saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. I was able to be patient.
Correct.
Children learn patience by being held like that. You can be screaming all you want in your head. And believe me, it was not pleasant. And it never is. But if you can remember to be patient, you are repairing that child's grief. And that's what's important. Not that you said no, not that you did some stupid thing that the book tells you not to do. We're all going to do it. The important is that love. Okay?
Thank you so much, Richard, for sharing all this information. This is great for our viewers and our listeners, and especially this is not just for professionals, this is also for parents out there who are viewing this episode, who are listening to this episode. And I can't thank you enough for sharing all this valuable knowledge and the resources that you're planning to send it, because this goes a long way, and especially when we are at home with our kids, it can be pretty taxing, it can be overwhelming. And understanding the fact that it's okay to say no, it's okay to get upset, doesn't make you a bad parent, doesn't make you somebody who doesn't care for your child. That's being the good enough parent, right? So thank you so much.